Hey gamers, Blindy here. It's May 2025, and through my journeys playing games in my backlog, I got a bit sidetracked and I ended up playing Celeste. I recently released a video, my current 5 recommendations for games to play on the Steam Deck, and, spoiler alert, Celeste was on that list. Now, to have been on that list, it had to have been a game that I played before. Otherwise, my claim as a reviewer would be questionable at best. But that would also mean that this wouldn't be considered to be in my backlog. And you know what? That's fine. That's perfectly fine. And the reason it's fine is because I haven't reviewed it for you yet. So that's what I plan to do today. Celeste has been around for several years at this point, but given the history of platformers, it's unique that many people, myself included, consider this one of the best platformers to exist. Consider that other platformers, including famous ones like the Super Mario Bros. And Sonic series of games, were not only popular, were not only common, but in my mind were considered the default style of game in the early console generations. It's hard to create a game today that could compete with so many great options that already exist. We'll leave the details for later, but I hope I've set up your expectations if you haven't played this game before. Celeste released on January 25th, 2018 for PC, Mac OS, Linux, the Nintendo Switch, the PlayStation 4, and the Xbox One. Later on, it was released for the Google Stadia. Remember that system? So this game was developed primarily by Maddie Thorson. Shout out to her, being an Albertan. I kind of like to show some support to those developers that are from my neck of the woods. She and her small team eventually moved out to Vancouver, but we'll forgive her for that. And when her team moved, they transitioned from the name Maddie Makes Games to Extremely OK Games. So according to Wikipedia, Maddie Makes Games is the developer and producer for this game, but if you play this game now, you'll see Extremely OK Games as the developer. It's all tied together and it all leads to the same place, but it's a little confusing if you're trying to follow those details. From my understanding, this game originally started as an idea that developed from a 4-day game jam. After the jam, the game was developed into a much more comprehensive game with cleaner visuals, expanded environments, tailored music, and a solid story. The original game from the game jam can be found in the game as the Pico 8 version. The idea of climbing a mountain somewhat mirrored the struggles of game design, as well as Maddie's personal struggles, and the gameplay was designed to be minimal. The controls were simple, where you move, jump, grab, and dash. And as you progress, you gain a couple more abilities that change the gameplay slightly. As I said earlier, this wasn't my first time playing this game, and it will be one that I will return to as well. This time around, I played it on my LCD Steam Deck, but I've also previously played it on my computer, though I would highly recommend playing it with a controller. I don't think the controls will be nearly as fluid on a keyboard. If you're wanting to pick this game up yourself, the price isn't bad. It's $26 Canadian, but you'll be able to find it on sale pretty easily. But the prices can differ depending on the sale. I've seen it down to 90% off once, making it about $2.50. If you ever see it that cheap, don't think, just buy. Usually though, it's actually 75% off, bringing it down to $6.50, which is still a great price. I'm assuming that's $5 American, so if you see it at any of those prices, definitely buy this game. Don't even second guess yourself, it's worth it. It won't take up much space at all either. At 1.2 gigs, you can jam this onto your system even if it's nearly maxed out. Personally, it took up 1.12 gigs on my Steam Deck. This game is verified for those of you also playing on the Steam Deck, and I completely agree with that. And you'll be able to get in at least 1.5 hours per charge, usually closer to 2 hours, so it is a game that travels well. And I've claimed this game is beloved, and I personally love it as well. I hope that doesn't give away too much for this review, but I can't help myself. It really is a great game. Metacritic critics have a pretty similar experience, it would seem. Across the multiple platforms on Metacritic, it scores in the low to mid-90s, and it scores even better on Steam, getting a 97% approval rating from over 107,000 reviews. I'm telling you, it's not just me. ESRB rates this game an E for everyone. It says there's fantasy violence, an alcohol reference, and mild language, but yeah, I'm not really sure it warrants even those warnings. In my mind, it's suitable for anyone that can pick up a controller, at least content-wise. Difficulty, on the other hand, is a different story. It's hard, but you don't have an option to change the difficulty settings. Instead, it plays the same for everyone, but there are optional challenges that are more difficult. We'll get into those specifics a bit later though. And to play through the main story of this game, How Long to Beat says about 8.5 hours is needed. For me, on this particular run, I needed around 7 hours, but again, I've played this a few times. Not that being previously familiar with the game actually changes much, to be honest. It takes some time for your fingers to get familiar with the controls, whether you've played the game or not, and difficult is difficult, so some screens will take a lot of time as you try to figure out how to grab a strawberry, for example. But I think once you've played through it, you feel more comfortable skipping out on those side challenges and checking each side route to see if you're missing anything worth exploring. And now we've hit that point in the video that I want to warn everyone before I continue. I will be talking about the story, gameplay, and lots of little details of the game. I will do my best not to get into anything that could spoil the game for anyone, but everyone's tolerance for spoilers is different. So if you're concerned about learning too much from this point forward, consider this your warning. Potential spoilers are ahead. You'll be playing this game as Madeline as you decide to take on the challenging task of climbing Celeste Mountain in the mysterious land of Canada. Madeline feels the world's stresses pile up on her, and she felt she needed to get away and go accomplish something worthwhile. By taking on the arduous climb of this fabled mountain, she feels like she can feel accomplished in at least one thing that she attempted. And while I'm sure most of us haven't abandoned our real lives to seek a mountain to climb, I'm thinking that many of us can relate to how the feeling of not being able to control everything in our lives and wanting to escape your troubles and fears can seem so appealing. Along the way, Madeline finds other people on the mountain. First, she meets the old lady that greets all newcomers to the mountain. She questions Madeline's resolve and shows up frequently during her climb to see how she's progressing. Theo is a fellow climber from Seattle that loves to take selfies. He's a perpetual optimist who helps Madeline focus herself when her stresses are at their worst. And Mr. Oshiro runs a hotel on the mountain that has seen better days. Madeline seems to understand his struggles and wishes to help him, and while she does what she can, she still has to focus on her own issues as well as continue her trek to the summit. This journey that Madeline takes is not only a run through a difficult platformer, but it also emphasizes a journey of mental health, a journey that creator Maddie Thorson was struggling with herself as she developed this game. It's not just a climb to the top of the mountain, it's also overcoming the things that hold you back mentally, visually represented in the form of a mountain, one that you have to overcome, and all that cliche type of stuff. But I don't want to gloss over the story or the importance of mental health. The story is quite good, and mental health is extremely important, but this is a story that I think should be experienced. It's not a story that is consuming or overburdened, but it serves as a solid backdrop to return to between hard runs of constantly dying. In a good way. You know what I'm trying to say. And I briefly mentioned this before, but this game has really simple controls. This is a platformer, but I would personally define it as a precision platformer, one that requires specific timing, skills, and repetition to master this game. It's closer to other platformers like Super Meat Boy than it would be compared to games like Super Mario Bros. Or the Donkey Kong Country games. But the control scheme is simple. You can run, jump, dash, and climb. There is a stamina meter for climbing, and you can only double jump for most of the game, but that's really it. The other skills you learn come late in the game, and in essence, don't really change the gameplay that much. Running, jumping, and dashing sound easy, but there are lots of dangers that make this seemingly simple game into a challenging gauntlet that feels satisfying to overcome. For the most part, you may die a few times per screen as you try to figure out the route, but it's not oppressively frustrating to try to beat like a Souls-like game might be. You will still get a sense of accomplishment because you'll be able to progress, with each screen acting as a save point. You don't have to redo the same screen over and over again. You know what? I'm just gonna say it. I'm tired of the Souls-like genre. Making me run long distances to repeatedly die is aggravating. Screw that. Celeste does it right. If you die in Celeste, you spawn at the beginning of the screen in about 3 seconds. You're right back to tackling the same challenge almost immediately. It's satisfying to die. Wait, no, that came out wrong. It's satisfying to take on the same challenge right away. No waiting, no getting beaten up by random enemies as you try to make your way back to where you died previously. No screens are repeated over and over again, even if you're just passing through. Nah, this is the way to do it. Now, let's chat about the visuals in this game. Simply put, I love the way this game looks. It feels bright and lively, even in the darkest parts of the game. Not that this game is a bright and vibrant game in its overall mood, but the colors look sharp and the visual clarity is really well done. You can easily identify what you can jump on, what can hurt you, what you can grab onto, and all that. The visual design feels like it was meticulously curated, or maybe I'm overblowing things. But it's nice that every region has a distinct feel to it, the interactable objects are easy to spot, the colors fit the mood in the area, and everything feels good. And I think it's even more of a statement given that this game is built with pixel graphics. It's cool that you can see Madeline showing emotion with just a few dozen pixels. It's not much, but it's enough to get the job done. But not everything is perfect. The biggest issue that I have with anything visually is the text boxes. Once I talk about this, you won't be able to unsee it. I'm sorry. But if you look, the text boxes have a flourished design in the middle of the box, but the text is centered in the text area, which is off-centered. So the center of the text doesn't line up with the center of the text box. It just feels a bit wrong. Minor, but it exists. Back to some of the solid stuff in this game, the controls are pretty much impeccable. When you're playing a platformer, there are a few things that you really need to nail. You don't want your character to feel like they're sliding all over the place. You have to be able to control them a bit in the air. You have to be able to land where you want and not end up somewhere that you didn't expect, and so on. Platformers on the surface seem easy to create, and in the most basic sense, they are. When you're learning to create a game from scratch, chances are that the first example game you create is a platformer. But to get those little details to feel just right can be a bit of a challenge. And if you're looking for one that's the mama bear of platformers, Celeste feels just right. I wish I could give you a more solid impression as far as how the movement in this game feels, but my words lack the ability to convey how smoothly everything plays. That doesn't mean I played flawlessly, not by a long stretch. But you don't want the game to be the reason you fail. If the only reason you fail is because you didn't play correctly, then that's fine. But if you failed because the controls suck, then that's just aggravating. One of them you can overcome, the other you can't. And I think it's kind of cool that this game provides players with the Pico 8 version of this game. It shows how the game was originally created, and you're able to compare it to the final product. The original game is fun, but it's not nearly as satisfying as the full game. And a lot of it has to do with those controls I was just talking about. It's refined, like a good Grey Poupon or something. Another thing added into this game was the B-side, which is an alternative level available for each level. To get the B-side, you have to find the room that the cassette is hiding in, manage the relatively difficult puzzle, and grab the cassette. Once obtained, the B-side is unlocked, and you can tackle the more difficult level in the level select screen. This time around, I didn't spend much time playing through any of them, but you could see a little bit of one level here. It's fun, and if you're really getting into the game, it gives you a bit more gameplay to tackle once you've finished it. Another way to challenge yourself in this game is through strawberries. You'll find them all over the place throughout this game. And generally speaking, reaching them takes a bit more skill than just passing them up. In fact, that's probably where the vast majority of my lives were lost in this game. I went for almost all of them and succeeded in grabbing almost all the ones I found. But if I really wanted, I could have spent several more hours scouring the levels and dying over and over again for more of them. And this game respects you as well in telling you exactly how many strawberries you've grabbed compared to how many remain. You can easily tell what you're missing, if anything at all. And to top it all off, at the end of the game, you get a screen that tells you how many in the game you're able to grab. If you're anything like me and consider yourself a completionist in any sense, you'll spend a lot of time traipsing through all the screens you can to see if you found them all. There's something mildly satisfying about going after a stupid goal like that. The world design is pretty cool too. Generally, when I think of platformers, my mind thinks of linear environments, like a Super Mario Bros. Level, or a Metroidvania, where the same rooms are used over and over again until you're frickin' sick of being in the same place. In Celeste, it's linear, and you play linearly if you wish, but there are a lot of side areas to investigate. Things like cassette tapes are always in a room off the side, but many strawberries can be found that way, and some other hidden areas can be found. But they will all bring you back to the main route, so you might find one room or a large series of rooms that form a loop, but you won't get lost. You're always being pushed forward. And because of this style of world design, you're able to re-enter levels you passed to find those hidden areas. So there might be a time where you're forced forward, even though you might have wanted to check out another path. So don't stress if you miss exploring a section that you wanted to check out. And there are a few sections where the screen is larger, so you're assisted with spots that have mounted binoculars so you can view the area before you tackle it and get stranded trying to figure out what to do. It's a minor feature, but to be perfectly honest, it may not be super helpful for a lot of situations. But it's nice that you're given a tool that will prevent you from going into the situation blindly. And one thing I really appreciate is that you can save anywhere in this game. You won't lose any progress since each screen is a save point. So if you need to bail from your gaming session before you expected to, don't worry about losing a bunch of time. As you travel through these different environments, like any good game design, you'll find that this game gets more challenging as you progress. More than just chasing strawberries and cassettes, the levels get more complex and precise, but nothing to the point of being frustratingly impossible. Perhaps you'll encounter more spikes or larger gaps to cross that require more specific timing, or things like wind become something to contend with later. It's nice that it doesn't stay the same throughout the game, but these new challenges that are introduced gradually over your gaming time are easily adaptable. And I have to say something positive about this music. Overall, it's fantastic, especially at the end. A lot of music in games does the job that's asked of it, so a scary part will have spookier music, or an action-filled part will have fast-paced, adrenaline-pumping type of music. But rarely is the music anything more than just background sounds filling up the audible space. But occasionally you get a game that really cares about the music, and it is noteworthy on its own. Games like Donkey Kong Country 2 and Katamari Damacy just nail the music vibe in those games, and this one is close. I mean, not quite to those levels, but if Donkey Kong Country 2 and Katamari Damacy were 10s, then this one would be around an 8. And you have to love all the small details that show that the developers cared for their game. And one that really stands out to me with Celeste is when you enter water, the music gets muffled. Nothing special, but it stands out, and I quite like it. This game is really one of my favorites, and it's nice that it won't take you long to get familiar with the controls. And by the end of the game, your fingers automatically start doing all kinds of complex commands in rapid sequence, and it still won't prevent you from dying a lot. I personally had over 1,000 deaths in this run-through, and even more in previous plays. I knew what I had to do, and I could execute what I needed to do, but I often didn't do it quite the way I needed to. So I had to try again, and again. As you might be able to tell, I would definitely recommend this game. Across the board, to all players, this game is one that I easily recommend. Don't be turned off by the deaths. It isn't a Souls-like, so you don't feel defeated every time you die. You still have a great sense of progression, and you generally put yourself in danger as you try to accomplish more than completion of the game, because you like the challenge. It can be done, and after a few tries, it will be done. They're the most rewarding deaths you'll have in gaming. It's weird to say, but I think it's true. And I find it to be quite replayable. The story isn't the driver for the game. It's there as a backdrop, but you don't need to worry about having spoiled the game after finding out the story. The gameplay is what makes the game great, and the challenge and extras make it fun to try to get better and constantly improve. So with all that said, let's score the game. Can you guess what it's going to be? Celeste gets a 9 out of 9, 100%. This game is like Minecraft, or Burnout, or Katamari Damacy. I'll always return to it. It's not a long game, but damn, it's a satisfying game. It plays well, it looks great, it sounds amazing. It just has all the things that I love in a solid title, and it's just another piece of evidence that there are some truly spectacular indie games out there. Here's where I typically include a bit of the boss fight for you folks to see, but there's no boss in this game, so I guess that's just another point in this game's favor. I'm not a huge fan of boss fights, and especially incredibly difficult boss fights just because. So foregoing a final fight is a big plus in my mind. And that wraps up my review of Celeste. I've covered a lot, but I didn't cover everything. So let me know, was I fair? Was I wrong? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section, and we can chat about it. If I had a Patreon page, here's where you'd hear about it, but I don't. Instead, I have a Discord channel that I invite everyone to join. I like having a chance to talk about games with others, so if you want to discuss something with me, you can find me there. So thank you to everyone that joined me today. Without you, I'm just a weirdo talking into a microphone. If you enjoyed this video, tapping that like button is supposed to appease the YouTube algorithm gods, or so I've been told. And if you loved it, you can be one of the earliest subscribers to this tiny channel. I'm hoping to get to 100 subscribers, and you could be one of them. Thanks again, and I hope you have an amazing day. Take care.